Hello,
Hi,
we're
hi,
back.
hi, hi. So last week we started a discussion on NewMe, changing perception. It was a very interesting discussion. If you've not watched it, go into our channels
Yes,
and
Kirby.
watch it. And this week we are concluding on changing perception. We said this week we'll give you a flare of changing perception, and this week we're going to talk about how we can improve our perception and help us to become better in terms of the way we see people from different culture and interact with them. How do we improve on perception? Bridging the gap between perception and your intention. So now, the perception people have, again, means as an example, is I am loud. But my intention is in loudness. My intention is bringing joy to people. Anywhere I go, I want people to smile. I want people to be happy. Anywhere I go, I want people to, just have fun. But that doesn't mean that has the way people perceive me. Now, for me to be able to improve on both sides, for the person that is receiving my crazy laughter and my joyfulness, and for me that is doing it, we want to improve our skills. Number one, we need to develop empathetic listening skills. The camera. So for you to be able to understand where little J is coming from when you're having a conversation, you need to develop empathetic listening skills when you're having a conversation. So you need that skill. Another way of improving it, Big J, can you read the next one?
Become aware of stereotypes and prejudice and engaging in self-reflection.
That's exactly what we've been discussing. So be aware of your stereotypes about people
And try to change them.
and try to change them. So and
Self-reflection.
self-reflection. Little J, read the next one.
Raise your awareness of thoughts and perception.
So become more aware. So raise your awareness and your thoughts and perception. Consciously shift your perception to look for the positive in life. Joan comes into an environment. Oh, she laughs and she makes everybody happy. Focus on the positive. Does she leave everybody happy or sad? Now, the room is messed up and little J did it. Focus on the positive. Did she have fun? Did she learn something? Maybe. Now you focus on that positive. Is she learning something by interacting with her own world the way she's doing, rather than looking at the negative? I give you an example. Big J came in this morning and the hamster cage, the feeding has been filled up. Now she wants to do it herself, which I agree. But next time, focus on the positive. Is she helping me to feed the hamster? Yes. Do I have to go to the hamster if she has already done it? No. One load lifted up. But if we don't focus on the positive from the perspective of everything we see, we end up getting upset every single time. So the first thing is judge the situation. What's the intention? The intention was to feed the hamster. The intention was not to upset me. So focus on the positive. Perception checking is a strategy that allows us to monitor our perception of and reaction to others and communication. So we have to develop our perception checking because it helps us to monitor how am I reacting to this person? How am I perceiving this person? Now, to go back to the encounter that I had in the hospital today, when I checked the lady's perception or when I checked the lady's reaction, I knew she was upset. So I was not going to leave that place until I resolve that perception or a reaction. You see? Now, perception and culture. Culture and change perception. So we said we've defined what culture is. We started defining what culture is from the first episode when we're talking about express yourself. And we gave you all those various images of art, blah, blah, blah. So we'll go to it. So culture informs all our lives. And then perception is how we interpret the impact of culture and how we interpret our word. How we interpret our word in terms of relation with others. The way an individual learns and how they view other cultures and even how they view other individuals is determined by the perception of that culture in relation to theirs. So it's like evaluating. This is how I eat as a Scottish. So why shouldn't an African that come into Scotland eat what I eat? You see? So they interpret other people from their own culture and not necessarily understand people from other people's culture, which fair enough is normal. But for us to have established cultural awareness among kids, we need to teach kids not just to see people from their own culture, but to see people from other people's culture. What's their art? What's their language? What's their religion? What kind of food do they eat? What kind of sports do they play? What kind of music do they listen to? And begin to appreciate them from there. Right. Now, cultural perception. So culture and perception are linked together. So they are interwoven. People view and perceive themselves and others in the world, as well as events and social and political happenings. We'll not go over that. We've talked in depthly on that in our last video. So if you want to understand what we're saying about all that, no, our last, no, we talked about that, and we actually talked about it. Yeah, if I've divided it, if I didn't, yeah. So culture includes people's background and upbringing, as well as religious beliefs and political. We've said that in Express Yourself. Our past experiences shape our perception, which in turn forms our beliefs and drive our behaviors. That in turn creates our culture. So experiences turn to perception, perception turns to belief, belief turns to behavior, behavior turns to
thought
culture.
it's the other way around. Because it's
No.
on the bottom.
No. So now let's take an example and interpret that. Give me an experience that changed your perception, and then we use that to develop culture. So I'll give you an example. In where I grew up from in Nigeria, it's very common to eat together as a family from a common plate. So if you want to have a meal, a bowl of rice, they'll put the bowl of rice in a bowl, and everybody will bring their spoon.
Sometimes they still do that.
So they bring the bowl in the middle, and they put the rice and they put the stew, and the mom or grandmother, hey kids, it's time to eat. And then those that have spoon and those that don't have spoon wash their hands, and they can use their hands. Now that experience shaped my perception of eating together as a family and happy together as a family. So it built a collective experience of togetherness. When I left, it has shaped my perception that a family can experience togetherness on the table. Most of the time, because it's fights too, because it's whoever that is fastest to eat the more. Yeah. So if you are slow, you end up not eating, and you be the crying one to leave the table. Now, it changed. It also helped me to know that life is not equal. So the faster one, I learned early that I should not expect people to be slow eaters because I'm a slow eater. I should not expect people to be like me. I should not expect the same treatment because if I take one spoon, I should expect everybody to take one spoon. No, that experience shaped the way I interpret life, that life is not fair. And then it turned into my belief that life is not fair. All fingers are not equal. And that belief started from the table where we were eating together. And then that belief now changed into my behavior, that when I go out or when I'm behaving towards others, I try to understand that people cannot behave the way I behave. The way I'm able to interpret situation and judge others is not everybody that can do how I do it. And then it now became my culture of understanding people first before I judge them. Can you see? It started from a plate of food on the table. And that is exactly how your past experience affects your perception, shapes your belief, drives your behavior, and creates the culture. I just gave an experience of me. So if you are Scottish, if you are English, if you are American, if you are Togolese, if you are Syrian, if you are Algerians, wherever you are on the face of the earth, I want you to take your past experience tell yourself, do a self-reflection, how it has affected your perception, how it has affected your belief, your behavior, and now your culture. And all that shapes what drives us, forms us, shapes what creates us. Past experience shapes perception. Perception forms beliefs drives our behavior, and behavior drives our culture. I don't even want to go into what popular culture and how experiences are changing people. But if we look around, we can see how past experience have evolved to become new cultural norms that have gone into extremes sometimes, all because of past experiences. It has driven those experiences to perception, to beliefs, to behavior. And now we have new cultural things, which is totally different from when I was growing up. Okay. What is the effect of these cultural differences? Now, let's back to we talked about the Western and the Eastern. Now I'm reflecting it from that aspect. People from the West, they believe in perception through personal attributes. Now, the cultural norm of a Western person is come to the table, everybody have their plate, their fork, their knife, they sit down, they know how to hold the fork, they know how to take the cup, drink it while they're eating. They have a conversation on the table, and when they finish eating, they know how to put the fork and the knife together. They are all, you see, everything is individual. So that eating can reflect on their individual culture. They are very individualistic because right from the table, they teach everybody your own plate. While where I come from, they teach everybody community plates. Eh?
I like the community group.
Everyone there's no good or bad. Everyone has its plus or minus. Now I just told you the effect of a community plate because it cheats and everybody you don't have a fair share. Yeah, you don't have a fair share. But the Western culture or the attributes of the eating table on the Western culture, everybody has a fair share. So that also affects the society. The society in the Western culture is more built on a fair share. Why in the Eastern or where we come from is more of who takes first. You see what I mean? It affects our behavior. So people from the collective culture tend to focus on the situation to explain the behavior. I explain the situation on the table and I use that to motivate my behavior, which is different from the Western culture. Individual differences are attributional styles that influence or attributes that influence how we respond to negative events that we experience. So the individual differences now on the table while I was eating together, I'm a slow eater. That's different influenced how I respond to the fast eater because I will be upset and I'll fight him. Why did you eat all? So can you see my difference influence how I perceive the fast eater on the table and I get upset with them and then we fight, we have a conflict. But it's just my difference that affected that. But that doesn't mean that fast eater did anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, whoever takes first, that's the way life is. Now from that picture, we can see the images. Little J, what's happening in that image?
There's threat perception, which includes threat, emotion, and perception.
So let's make it faster. Now in the picture, let's take individuals and how they react to things. Now, a threat perception, the way I'll react to a threat is different from the way my emotions and my perception and prejudice and discrimination and how I will panic in terms of a disaster. So completely different from how Big J will do it. That's our individual differences. Leadership, the way I'm going to trust a leader, identify leadership or group leadership is different from the way Big J or Little J will do it. Individual and collective interests, we've talked about that in individual society. You know, they are more cooperative, they are more individual, they are more moral decision making. Collective society, they are more moral decision making because they will judge the situation before they make a choice. Social communication. Oh, I can speak that. If I go to my place in Africa, all of us will just feel like I'll be talking, I'll be laughing. But if I go to the Queen anniversary party, do you expect me to shout? Do you expect me to do that? Oh yeah, it will be very funny. The Queen will look at me and say, "Who is that?" In terms of our communication, our situation also determine how we communicate. There's in social context, our social norms, our culture, our political polarization, social inequalities affects the way we also react as individuals. Stress, that's mental health. So the level of stress can determine how hostile we are, how people end up in prison, how people treat other people. So all these are important to put in context of cultural differences with people from different backgrounds. Now, I just used, but just a slide to show you the traits of collective culture in a summary. Collective culture, they promote selflessness, eat together, enjoy it all. They work together as a group. They do things for the best of the society. At least we wash it in one plate rather than 12 plates on the table. Family and community has a central role. They just do everything. The traits of individual. I'm unique. I want my plate. This is me. Autonomy. Yeah. I want my independency. And I'm self-sufficient. See?
What's the point of doing that self-sufficient thing?
I'm on my own. You know, that is why it's important for both of you that you are building up a trait of both the collective and the individual. It's important that you know the uniqueness of each one of them. Even though you want to be unique, you need to understand that it's important to work in a group. Even though you have autonomy, it's also important that you do things for the best of the society. Even though you want to be independent, you also want to understand that you have to promote no selfishness. Let's now look at how we improve. This is a very big slide. I'll just talk generally about improvement. So improvement in social in change perception. So yes, my girls, when they saw this slide, the first question they said was, "Oh, this is so confusing. How do you want us to understand?" So I said I was going to break it down. Now, when it comes to improving your change perception, this is the core. So children, for you to be able to understand the importance of changing perception, why you have to do it. So improving your perception, you have to be aware of your schema. So now schema is your mental coping of an experience. We've talked about it in the 5 stages you respond to them. So if it's important that you go to the part of the conversation. So that's exactly what we're talking about there. So it's important that you are aware of that stage. It's important that you understand their socializing forces. It's important that you understand that you have to avoid self-fulfilling prophecies. We'll talk about that later. It's important that we avoid negative patterns which distort our reality, and especially how we evaluate others. It's important that we improve on our listening and empathetic skills. That is so important. Now, the world we live in, we have only one ear. You just hear something and then that's it. And Twitter just go berserk. It's important that we have empathetic skills. Listen to the other side. Listen to the other argument before we decide and judge. Children, this is so important. It is so important. We are living in a very fragile world, and people are so fragile that people are not listening to each other anymore. Exactly. Any little thing ticks people off. Very scary. Can you speak loud? And it's very scary. I'm just saying what she's saying. So be aware of stereotypes and prejudice, develop self-awareness through self-reflection, and engage in perception checking. And we'll just go through these little things in one by one. So the first thing is be critical of socializing forces. What does that mean? Conforming. Exactly. Yeah. That's so loud. That's mommy. So be very careful on not conforming to what the social norm says. When the social norm says anybody that comes into your class that have a kinky hair, let them stay away from you. Don't conform.
Can you remove this?
What?
Like, remember the time affect his square root or zero by?
You can use it as an example. Now, for instance, there was a situation of a school ahead where kids were led to the dinner table by the color of their hair and the colors of their eye. That was a socializing force. Yeah, it sounded really bad. It was a socializing force that was putting boundaries on certain characteristics from certain characteristics. And before you know it, if that is ingrained, that perception is built up by kids, they end up relating to people in the school or in the community based on that. So be critical of socializing first. Avoid reliance on rigid schemas. That's what I mean by that is avoid rigid thinking. This is the way I go, and that's it. That's it. You know, I'll give a very good example. When I'm driving on the road and there is slow traffic, and I see slow traffic, I see all the cars just staying on the road. Even if the second lane is free to go, that is rigid schema.
Schemas.
No, that is no, not the bus lane. But you know, there's a tendency that all cars will just keep going on the same way. People are not using their brain to think of any other thing apart from we are just going on the same direction. So let your brain reflect on situations by individual situation. Avoid rigid schemas. Okay, so don't follow everybody like a lost sheep. Think every situation needs a new thinking process. Don't rely on the past thinking to interpret today's situation. I remember having a conflict with someone, and every time the person wants to reflect on what I've done, they narrate everything I've done before I was born. So what I did when I was born, to what I did when I was growing up, and then interpret what I did 5 minutes ago to what I did when I was born. So that is a typical example of rigid schema because they are not reflecting on individual situation. They interpret the situation in the mirror of what has happened ages ago every time. So beware of self-fulfilling prophecy. A very good example. Now, you come into class and your teacher is from the Eastern descent, let's say Chinese, and you say, oh, those Chinese teachers, you can never hear their English properly. You built So you built a perception that anybody that is Chinese characteristics or Chinese descent can speak English properly. You come into class because you've already had that perception. And when you come into class, your brain is already saying, I can't hear, 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 I can't hear. And you do your exam. And when you do your exam, you fail. Why? Because you've already prophesied from the beginning of the year that you cannot hear what that teacher is saying. I'll give a typical example. An ignorant person that decides not to learn about how another person is speaking will hear somebody like me speak and say, pardon, pardon, pardon. Many times, the pardon is not because you didn't hear. Many times it's because you built a prophecy in your head that you cannot hear people from these particular places very well. Oh, a very good example is pronunciation of names. You can pronounce.
They always say my name Jadadar.
Yeah. Now you can pronounce them from every part of the world. But when it's an African name, you say Chibo, 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 Chibons, Chibons, Chibons.
No, it's actually Chibons.
Yeah, Chibons. You want to say producer? Chibons, Chibons, Chibons,
Cherry.
Cherry, Chib. Ah,
So annoying.
that is.
They can say all
They can
Irish
say-
names.
they
Like
can
Riley, which has
They can
like
say
20
any
languages.
other name apart from African names. It is just self-fulfilling prophecy. Somebody can call it microaggression racism. I don't call it. It's just because their brain have not changed to accept the fact that they have a self-fulfilling prophecy of pronouncing names from this part of the world differently or erroneously. If they try and they can pronounce the name we saw in the music concert yesterday, I can't even pronounce that. But you know
right.
exactly.
Not a Russian name.
A Russian name. If you can pronounce,
Eastern-
I saw the Russian name or Eastern European name, and I told Jenny, I can't pronounce this. I'm sorry. It was I couldn't even pronounce it. But if somebody else can pronounce that name comfortably, and then I bring my 6-letter word name or 5, or 5 or 7, and that name was about 12 or 15-letter name.
Oh yeah, and before lecture one.
Yeah, 4-letter. Yeah.
They keep saying
Joanne.
Yeah, that's that because there's a different that's a different abbreviation. That's different. And Joan is an English name, but it's Uma. Uma is just 3-letter word.
They say number.
Number.
I say number as a joke.
Number.
I say house number.
You see that? Okay, let's go to the next one. Creating and maintaining interpersonal relationship. For you to improve your perception, you need to create and maintain more relationships, especially from people that are different from you. So beware of distorted pattern of thinking and acting. You just have this pattern of thinking that people from this culture act this way or think this way. We are unique. We need to just be aware and start correcting. We are looking at that 180 again. Let's begin to take that 180 shift in the way we think about others. 180 shift. 180 shift. 180 shift.
We should all do it to say that.
180 shift. Okay. So overcome the barriers to perceive others certain way. Now, there are barriers the society has pushed. There are barriers, our experiences, when we're talking about our past experiences. The barriers our past experiences are put upon us, which is not our fault. It's just our past experiences. Now, let me give a very good example out of the scope. If a woman has been abused by a previous partner, the initial experience she's going to have is every other partner is going to be like that. Now, you have to overcome that barriers of perceiving every other person or every other man that come into your life as an abuser. Or let's say a child that is being bullied in school. Let me use a perfect example. A child that's been bullied in school would have to overcome the barrier that every person is not coming to bully him or her, because that's just going to be the perception. Like anybody that is coming towards me, teacher, classmates, friends, foe, everybody's coming to bully me. But you need to change that perception and overcome the idea that you can still make friends. You can still make friends. Develop empathetic.
Have we? Oh wait.
We're talking about it in this slide. Develop empathetic and listening skill, and beware of stereotypes and prejudice. We've talked about this, and we are going to
beware of self-fulfilling.
Exactly, self-fulfilling prophecy. They are all parts of stereotypes and prejudice. Engage in self-reflection. Wow, I read a big book, and the big book there's a sentence in that big book says, "Examine yourself." So if I reflect this to perception, I use that a lot to engage in self-reflection. And that is why we say parents get the cultural awareness journal and get the reflective booklet for kids. It's so important that kids begin to think and reflect on how they behave to others and grow self. Because if a child begins at 5 years old or 6 years old or 7 or 8 to start doing self-reflection on themselves and their attitude towards others, by the time that child is a teenager, that child is better informed, matured, can relate to others better, and teachers will have less problems, parents will have less problems at home, the society will have less crime, and everything. These girls are just my loving ones. So everything boils down to that. So engaging in self-perception, checking self-reflection, checking your perception. How did I perceive this lady? How did I perceive this student? How did I perceive my neighbor? And how do I reflect on what is happening? Ask for feedback. What does it mean when we say ask for feedback? Yeah,
Um,
Big J.
like, how did I manage to do this without? No, like, did I manage to do this well?
Good. Okay.
Do you
So
think I should have improved
Uh-huh.
on this or that?
yeah. So what? Let's give an example of that list I asked you to write. What little J did wrong. I asked you to engage in self-reflection. And when I asked you to engage in self-reflection, the next thing I did was for you to talk to me to check your perception. And when you talked to me, you checked your perception. And then what now happened? You realized that you did something too wrong. And then the next thing is ask for feedback. Can I do it better? I did this wrong. How can I handle the situation? And then sometimes you come and say, oh, little J did this. And I ask you, what do you think you can do in that situation in a different way? That is asking for feedback. And we've gone through that a lot, right? As a family. Yeah. Then little J comes and say, okay, Big J does this. And then I say, do you have to be where Big J is at that moment? So now revealing your intention, what it means is it's important that you let people know why you're doing things. Instead of getting upset or using your perception to judge little J when the room is dirty, now you say, little J, I really want this room to be tidy. I want I want this room to be tidy. My intention is we should be able to have, everywhere sorted out whenever we enter this room. And I do that. I come to the kitchen and I say, I want the kitchen table clear. That's the intention every time. So I reveal the intention. Try feed forward technique. So when you're asking for feedback, most of the time is based on what you've done wrong.
Like, how did I make this
How did I make mistake?
mistake?
Yeah. But now when it comes to feed forward technique, you are asking, what can I do better in the future? How can I handle the situation so that next time I don't repeat the same error or mistake? You're asking for feedback, you're asking for feedback on what you've done in the past. But when you're trying the feed forward technique,
Oh, I see. Speak back
and
and
feed
feed
forward.
forward.
Exactly. You just see. You see, your eyes have just opened. That's her perception just opened.
Yeah.
Yay! We did something right. So feed forward is looking at what can I do better in the future to make it right. And feed forward is more important for kids because it helps them to think about the future rather than think about the mistake and guilt. So it's important that as teachers and parents, we actually teach our children or train our children in maturing and developing using feed forward techniques rather than feedback, because feedback might leave people with guilt, which sometimes you feel guilty after we talk. But when we use the feed forward technique, you're looking into the future, right? And you're thinking about what can I do better. Then make friends beyond your culture. We can't overemphasize it.
Can I do this?
What do you want to do?
So it means that make friends beyond your culture makes friends beyond where you live.
Make friends
Where you're
beyond from
from,
where you're
yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job.
Good job.
Well done.
So once again, we are back. Remember, get this material for your reflection. Your kids' reflection. Self-express yourself. Change perception, confidence, and get the awareness journal for your children. And I think we have been able to explore this topic in a very vast way. Big J, now you are the one that we have to speak to here. As the child or as the girl or as the individual that is going to use the cultural awareness journal. How does change perception? How do you think or you think that it can help other kids like you to change the way you look at others or treat others?
It uses a lot of pictures, so it'll be easier to get across to kids. Like,
It has a lot of
just write
writing,
something
please.
like that. Yeah, there's a lot of these rights. You can, and also what we learned is about changing your perception and the cultural awareness journal. It has it in the title and make you more aware, make you change any stereotypes or biases that you have.
Yeah. That's a very good reflection on change perception, the materials we are developing for your kids, your family. Adults can use it for you to begin, especially for adults that are starting on the journey of changing their perception on how to relate with individuals. Organizations can use it. We are an organization that is helping children to change cultural awareness or to change the awareness of different culture through literacy. And we appreciate that on this journey we are also learning. So we are not we are all of us are on the learning journey, and it's important that we know these things and apply them on daily in our lives. And what else do I want to say? Big J, we've had a fantastic long time doing this, and I hope you will join us next time. And as we begin to change and learn more and more about several individuals, everybody is unique. We don't condemn anybody here. Like I said, I'm loud and I'm just unique. but but my loudness can be offensive to someone, and my loudness can be joy to somebody else. You get what I mean? I wish you can see me when I sing. Out a microphone, I'm there. So it takes microphones that was. That's why I don't sing with the microphone.
And there's like
The microphone is like. So it's good to enjoy with me, and it's not because I'm bad or wrong. And for somebody that has a very quiet personality, I try to say, what did he say again? What did he say again? Because so you need, but it's important that we understand where that person is coming from. And now I'm learning that it's important for me to understand where the shy personality is coming from, quiet person is coming from. And it's important that the shy, quiet personality sees where I'm coming from and don't condemn me every time I utter something. Oh, you're loud, you're aggressive. No, it's not about that. Many of the time, I've actually discovered that where people are wrong, they use my loud personality as a defense to shut me up. Yeah, as a defense to say I have done something wrong. So I've lived with that, and I encourage you to learn to see other people. Don't take the left or the right, like in America, politics is messed up. Don't take the left or the right society. These girls, don't take the left or the right. Try to get the good perspective and establish good judgment before you take a side, before you judge. Don't follow what the social media is saying. Learn to do your own research. Do your research first. It's not whether one perspective is right or wrong. Anybody, like when I tell the kids, read a book. When you want to read a book about a culture, it is that person's perception they are still writing down. For you to understand a culture, you have to have a lived experience of that culture before you can decide. And it's not all of us that can have lived experiences, unfortunately. But even when you read a book, try to be more pragmatic about your judgment. When you see adverts on TV saying Africans they need pennies and they need your wallet. For instance, Lagos is richer than the whole Scotland. That day we were having a conversation in my college, and the students in my class realized that Lagos, a state in Nigeria, is richer than the whole of Scotland. They rushed to me and they said, hey, John, is this true? Is this true?
that the whole of the UK.
And all of UK, exactly. You know, and they were like, is it true? Is it true? I said, of course it's true. Don't believe what the popular media is telling you. In Africa is not as poor as you think. Yes, African can have bad leaders, just like the collective is all for one, one for all. We have bad leaders, I can't deny that, but that does not mean that Africa is poor. So we need to start changing this perception and also change the way we relate to people from that background. Remove the stereotypes and the ideas we've built, and begin to change. 180 is our logo. A 180 change.
Oh yeah.
A 180 change. A 180 change. So on this 180 change, I'm also having a 180 change to end today's broadcast because the girls are having a 180 field day. And so I want to thank you for joining us. I want to say bye-bye and see you next time. Bye.